Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got, yeah, I know you like that, Jake. We got another great show. Jake's coming back. Good to see you. Doc G, always good to see you as well. And a new face, Sarah McMahon. Very excited to talk to you as well. Now, while I'm excited, y'all should be excited too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That helps with all of our analytical data that we're getting in and allows you to get your email every time that we go live, which is of course every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, by all means, put them in the comment section and we can engage those directly throughout the show. Today's topic, before we get into that, let me dial it back a second. Sarah, do you want to give us a quick 30, 45-second blurb on who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sarah McMahon. I have in my life wrestled for 15 years. I have a Olympic silver medal, and I have 3 world medals. I fought MMA and the UFC for 10 years, UFC title contender. I have a master's in mental health counseling. I don't know what else. I think
that's too much already. I mean, that's
stop there, please.
I'm shrinking.
I'm just a coach.
Yeah,
I'm just a dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say like not too much at all. You've gotten done in your lifetime. Not so. I'm sure that you have many lessons, as do we all. But we're gonna get into that in a second. Just a quick comment, Steve Wilson. Oh boy, do I wish I could be in on this one. Well, yeah. Next time, shoot me a message, Steve. We'll get you involved in these combos, no problem. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about the lesson. So yesterday we were talking about time on target, and we kind of discussed what it takes, the amount of time that you have to involve in something, in any objective that you want to be able to, any endeavor that you're taking on. You got to put the time in to get to where you want to go. And right near the end, we started talking about the fact that there's times where you'll overinvest, you'll underinvest, or there's lots of times where you will not reach the objective, or you'll have an unintended outcome based on the amount of force that you're trying to achieve said objective. And those are life lessons. And it clicked in my head, like, how often do we actually talk about those particular lessons, but how often do we talk about how do we implement those lessons in our life? And so that's really what I want to get into today. But when you guys hear me say, the lessons in life, I'd like to hear what your guys' first thoughts are when you hear that. Jake, I'm going to start with you. What are your first thoughts on the lessons in life?
Yeah. So lessons in life wise, when I think of anything we're going through as human beings, as a strength conditioning coach, it's all about adaptation. So there's this factor of anything we're going through, right? We have to adapt to the stressors or resistance or anything in the coaching world. I'm applying resistance to you so you can adapt and overcome that. So every lesson, everything that we can learn from things and events in our life, it's all about adapting to those situations for me. And then your awareness as an individual is going to kind of set that meter for what you learn from every situation. And not everybody learns to adapt. Some people have to learn the hard way a couple times, same lesson. But for me, that's kind of what clicks, is adapting to situations and that resistance that life kind of pushes on us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Gino, what's your first thoughts?
Life's tough love, right? More often than not, whenever we're talking about lessons that are either experienced and are kind of figured out and the dots are connected on our end personally, right? Or they are lessons that have been handed down, right? Chunks of wisdom that have been passed down that help us navigate the waters of life a little more efficiently and effectively if we're open to actually apply the lesson. Regardless, somewhere, somehow, there's tough love involved, right? Something happened where things didn't go the way they thought they would, and something was learned, right? And it was learned for the betterment of whoever that person was. But in the same token, when I think about it, I also think in terms of deficiency, right? And when I mean deficiency, meaning we live in a very unique time where a lot of folks have a very challenging time with dealing with life's lessons, right? Dealing with the reality of maybe it didn't go the way you thought it would. And now you have to kind of remix that expectation management. But do you have the resiliency and the intestinal fortitude to do it and now apply what it is that you've learned? So, yeah, but overall, tough love.
Tough love. I like it. Sarah, what about yourself? What are your first thoughts?
So I had two thoughts thinking about life lessons. Like the first thought that popped in my head was when you hear about people who are on their deathbed and they look back on the things they wish they had done. I really am interested in those topics just because I feel like nobody is more wise or adept at telling us what life is about than the people who have lived that long and now can reflect back. And also, like, I'm just listening to other people. It popped into my head too that the life lessons are like that quote that's like, you get the test first, and then the answers or the lesson afterwards. So it's kind of the backwards of school that we're tested. And each situation can be looked at kind of like a test. And where do you kind of fall, or where do you rank, or how do you like you guys were saying too, like how do you adapt?
I like that. Shaun, what are your first thoughts?
Well, I'd like to cheat and say that I'd like to take the plural form of lessons, make it into the singular form, and use this sentence. The lesson in life is the lessons in life.
Nice, Don.
But I'll build off of that. And so I think that, interestingly enough, this morning, in fact, about 2 minutes before I hopped into this live chat, I was in between my own Instagram live chat and this live chat. That 2 minute space, the dog was going bonkers, our chocolate lab. And there was a bear at today's Thursday. In case you all aren't aware, today's Thursday day here in Rossland. And so I hadn't taken the garbage out this morning because the bears are out. They're active when it's garbage day. And so the dog was barking, a big brown bear, big one, biggest one I've seen this year, hustled its way down the side of our house in between the two houses, and carrying the biggest garbage bag I've seen in quite a while from my neighbor's garage that he left open. I was like, there's a lesson. And so as I was thinking about that, you got to stay open to the messages that the universe is sending you, like you've got to see the things that show up in front of you as evidence of this is a lesson. And so my lesson was, I'm not putting my garbage out this morning because it's bear day. And as I was thinking that, I got a knock on my door in between the 2 minutes that I had. And it's a local friend who said, hey, you got any coffee? I was like, yeah, your coffee's right there. See you later, buddy. I got a podcast. And as I was stepping back in, another freaking bear was walking up my driveway. I've actually got a photo or a video of it on my driveway, about to go for round 2. And so the lesson this morning was good decision to pay attention to my environment, to be open to shifting my normal routine, which is Thursday garbage day goes out. You got to pay attention to the signals that you're being sent.
I like that. Gino, you got any thoughts on it? I can see the gears turning in the back of your head there.
It's interesting. And when you go through the history of humanity and lessons that have been learned, timeless lessons at that, right? It kind of goes back to what Shaun did, right? Like the lesson in life is the lessons in life. Like that is, it's profound, Shaun. Like seriously, I really like that. Like I really, really like that because it resonates in such a big way. And it kind of goes to what Sarah was talking about as well, right? Matter of fact, there is a great book called A Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by an author out of Australia named Bronnie Ware. And she was a palliative care nurse throughout her career. And incredible. Truly, I recommend everyone read this book. But the number one thing that she found over 15, 16 years of doing research with folks who were on their way out, right, was the number one thing that was the most popular regret that they had was they did not have the courage to live the life they truly wanted to live, right? And so it begs the question, what does it take? What lessons were missed along the way, right? And then I think about, Shaun, what you said, the lesson is found in the lessons, and being open to that and being adaptable to that, I think is an incredibly powerful thing. But there's definitely a lot to unpack. But that book, definitely recommend everyone dive into.
Roger that. I will put it in the show notes. Sarah, you got any thoughts you want to expand on?
Just thinking about what he said, I've lived a super unorthodox life. When I started wrestling, there was no wrestling in the Olympics. When I started MMA, there was nothing in the UFC. In fact, Dana White was saying that, there's no way he would let women's fighting in the UFC. So it's kind of, for me, to live the life that is the one that you want, I think it takes a fair amount of not listening to other people and probably seeing things before they've come to fruition.
Absolutely. Jake, you got any points you want to add?
Well, what more can I say? I'm on here with a doctor and a like medaled Olympian. Like, what are you talking about? No, you guys are all on point. I think, like, along with what Shaun is saying, every experience we have in our life is an opportunity to learn something, whether it's good or bad for us, and end result is going to speak for itself. Shaun learned he's not going to get eaten by a bear today, but that could have been the consequence of not learning that lesson. So for me, it's just Shaun's excuse, though, to be late for the show. At the end of the day, that's all I'm thinking about.
I could see that. I could see that for sure. Shaun, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, I've been known to be late occasionally, but it's usually out of my control. So something that Sarah said that is really interesting to me, and I should preface all of this, I should have said it like right from the get-go. Obviously, Sarah, you've had an amazing career. I'm sure your career is going to continue to be amazing in anything that you do. I've been a lifelong martial artist. I've been doing martial arts for over 40 years. I've tracked everything that you've done on the UFC and in MMA and all of that good stuff. And so you're a bit of a hero. Not like my personal hero, but you're a bit of a hero to me, and here's why. Because what you just said is what I see in you. You had to see a future that didn't exist, nor was that future being supported by a lot of people around you. Like, you came up through the trenches. You came up the hard way. And coming up the hard way is it means a lot in my world. There's a lot of people that come up through the system not the hard way. They get less respect from me. I'm not saying that I disrespect them. I'm just saying that I don't respect them as much. What I love is a story of someone who comes up out of the mud, grinds their way towards the top, and whether they ever reach their visualized perfect outcome, whatever that means to whoever, what does matter to me is they have a winner's mindset in life. The lesson of life is to face those lessons in life with a, wait for it, victorious mindset. And coincidentally, I didn't plan on saying this, but this morning, as I was thinking about the lessons in life for about 10 minutes, I thought, well, what does that even mean to me? And it just so happened that exactly 7 years ago on this day, I got sent a T-shirt from an athlete that I was coaching at the time. I coached him to U.S. Nationals win, or he coached himself. I helped him get there, I suppose. So that T-shirt on the front just says victory. And I've worn that T-shirt all over the world. And for some people, it puts them off. Like, if they see me walking down the sidewalk with victory on my chest, like, it's not that they're offended by my effort to say, I like victories, I like being victorious, I like pursuing, I like winning, I like competing, I like being all that I can be. But you can see it in some people, how they're a little off-put by the fact that my mindset is positively winning focused. And so that T-shirt is not just a T-shirt that represents being victorious in life to me. What it does represent is what you've been doing, Sarah. So, and not in a way of maybe just the Sarah story, but the Sarah story that is surrounded by a whole pile of people who've watched your victories and thought, if she can do it, I can do it. If she can grind, I can grind. Can I grind harder? Can I keep up? All of these things that, for a guy like me, are appealing. The sense that there's someone out there crushing, and it inspires me to want to crush. So my IG post that I put out this morning before I came into this chat refers back to the t-shirt and victory and what that means to me per se. But really what it represents is the fact that an athlete that I coached sent me a t-shirt that said victory on it, the name of his bike shop. And in his words that he put on the little note in the image, he just referenced that I was a good dude. And that's enough for me, you know? Like, you do your best for someone and you get a victory by helping them win. And Sarah, you've pursued victory, but in so doing, you've helped me pursue things in a way. And so I feel that one of the lessons in life is to pursue victory with some vigor, if not just for yourself, then certainly to inspire those around you.
Sarah, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. It's really nice to know that people do kind of pay attention to different backstories, and they can appreciate that it wasn't just, I showed up and, oh, well, they just added it to, that I had been dedicating a lot of years of my life to something that I really enjoyed and really loved long before there was a chance to even be put in a competition to be victorious. And I also agree too, like having the victorious mindset. I do like a real small, like little kind of like mental prep in sports, like a sports psychology thing. And one of the young ladies that were in there, she was talking about, like, we were talking about goal setting, and she was told, oh, I'm told in jiu-jitsu, and this lesson is told a lot of, like, don't pursue medals, don't do it for the competitions and the victory. And I was like, like, there's nothing wrong with having goals and having big goals and having goals that you want to succeed in. I think that that's a wonderful driving force, a great, big carrot in front of you to push you. But I was just talking to her. I said, I think maybe the lesson that would be learned there is don't only want medals, because maybe you will do some pretty, like dishonorable things if you're only chasing victory. If you will win at all costs, it's not shameful to want victory. It's not shameful. There's nothing wrong with being competitive, I feel. But not at the point that you would cheat, not at the point you would, break rules or, do dishonorable things to get that victory. It can't be the only thing.
Absolutely. There's a small point to that I it clicked in my head, was that if you want to win at all costs, that means that you're willing to win over your own, at the cost of yourself, which that would be a very negative place to go. Jake, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I just like one thing for sure that's stuck in my head when the second Shaun said it. He said that Sarah came up through the trenches and came up through the mud, and I would go as far as saying she actually was digging the trenches. They didn't even exist yet. Like, I remember when Dana White said, like, women in UFC, no, like, he didn't see it happening. And to have a realistic goal, like, people at that time would have said that would have been unrealistic probably for you, Sarah, to think I'm going to fight in the UFC someday. That's going to happen. There would have been people trying to teach you a lesson that that's not going to happen. And you fought through that. That resilience to continue towards your goal is like immense. And Gino, I'm sure we'll talk about some attributes and things you did too, and not focus just solely on Sarah. But like, the fact that you have doctor before your name and the things you've done to get in that situation as well. Everything Shaun is saying, there's all these lessons and steps. I just think, like, for especially having you two on the show today, the variance in your success stories of being where you are in your careers is just like, I want to say to both of you, it's like an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys and talking. So I just want to get that out of the way now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Gino, you got any thoughts on anything?
Oh man, Sarah, like, kudos. You hit on some really good stuff. Shaun, as did you, right? So one of the things that comes to mind, so as conscious beings, right, as human beings, philosophically, right? There are these the concepts of they're French concepts, like pour soi in soi, right? And it kind of goes back to Jean-Paul Sartre, who was a philosopher, French philosopher, who very much had an existential approach to looking at life. But the whole idea of pour soi, meaning us as human beings existing for ourselves, right? Meaning that we define our own consciousness, we define the meaning that our life and what it is that we want this whole thing to mean at the end of the road when we take our last breath. But then being in pursuit of things that are inanimate, the en soi, right? The things that are beings within themselves, right? Not necessarily for itself. And I know I'm throwing a lot of nerd stuff around, but it's an argument and it's a line of thought that has been around for centuries. And it's this idea, Sarah, going to your point of when you are consciously aware of what it is that you want to go achieve, right? And if the thing that's driving you is something that is inanimate, that doesn't have the value, right, that you carry yourself as a human being, that driving force, what it does to the sacrificial aspect of things like loyalty and honor and code, that once you get there and you get that inanimate thing, right, the value that you've put on it doesn't compare to the value of the journey along the way. The journey is what matters. The journey is where all the lessons are. It's where all the goods are, right? And so when I think about in terms of my life and my story, I mean, very unorthodox, right? My journey to getting to where I'm at was not an orthodox approach to becoming a scholar, right? And someone who's been a professor and all that kind of stuff. It's been left turns here, right turns there, and trauma really has been the center of what it is that I've done. My aunt was shot in the face in front of me when I was 8 years old, right? That sparked off this idea of wanting to go dive after what is I've dove into. And just like Shaun, I've been a martial artist my whole life, right? So martial arts has kind of been that catalyst to push me through, and is what ultimately influenced me to get my doctorate degree, to understand at a deeper level how it is the brain, the mind, the heart, and the spirit works, and the development that can be done through combat arts. I say all that to say, when you're thinking about the aspect of what is that driving thing that's fueling how it is that we're embracing lessons in life, and what actually matters, what actually moves the needle for us as human beings. Victory, absolutely. I think having that focus, right? But what exactly are you going to be victorious of? What is it? Is it the medal, right? Is it the title? Is it the DR in front of my name, right? Is it the OLY after your name, right? No, that's not it, right? It is so much more to unpack. But I think a lot of people, especially at the beginnings, the onset of it, it's kind of this shiny object. It's like, wow, like I want to go do that. But the more you get down that path, you truly understand that all the goods, right, that are surrounding you at any given time on that journey, that is where the gold is. That is where you pick up all the things that are going to actually move the needle to help the next generation, to help people to your left and to your right. And that's victory, right? When you can sit there and you can see people rise because of something that perhaps you've been just a small catalyst of, right? Man, what fulfillment, what joy, right? And that's what life is supposed to be about.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I could say something.
Yeah, very.
The victory, I completely agree that it's not, the victory is just attaining that little medal, it's, in my opinion, it's victory over yourself, whether it's circumstances, your own demons, your own, the things that kind of hold you back or could keep you from your largest potential. So sometimes it isn't gaining that, that medal. It's changing your entire life and overcoming you and what hand you were dealt to get where you are.
Absolutely.
Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
I do. In the past, I think I've said several times, correct me if I'm wrong, that the win is a distraction to me sometimes. I'm less like the moment that someone's hanging some sort of medal off me, or like it's in my face and it's about to go over my neck, I'm already thinking about the next thing. I'm already focused on the next victory. And by victory, I mean not the win. Just as Sarah just said, the journey, just as the doc said, the journey. I love the journey. I'm less interested in the win. The win outcome is just the result of the journey as far as I'm concerned. And so wins don't distract me anymore. Maybe when I was younger for sure, but nowadays they don't distract me. What has my full attention is the path, not the shiny bauble along the path. And so that takes a while to understand. And it took me a while to understand. And let me go back to the T-shirt to illustrate that. So the Victory T-shirt that I received exactly 7 years ago, that was a representation of a guy, from a guy that I'd worked on behalf of to get him to a point that he'd asked me to get him to. And so it was when I got the T-shirt, and again today when I was reminded that I'd received it 7 years ago, it was an opportunity for me to either acknowledge that I'd helped a dude or just shrug my shoulders and think, cool T-shirt, man, and then move on. And so I could have played it either way. This morning I chose to reflect on the fact that I'd helped him in some small way, and that made me pleased to some degree that I'd helped him out in the past and that he had recognized that. It's not that I needed the validation. It was a simple reminder that that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to earn T-shirts by helping others to some degree.
Now, you got something, Jake? What do you got?
I do. I kind of have a question because I think we're really like on the tip of the needle here. We're not really we're all thinking about victory. What are your thoughts on, for the individuals who that don't have the accolades, that are attempting to even get to the journey? Like, we're all talking about winners right now because I think we're in a winner's circle almost. But what are your guys' thoughts on individuals trying to get on that path to victory, or even the individuals that have been on that path and failed?
If I could say something,
Sarah, for sure.
it's a winner's circle, but at some point, none of us were winners. At some point, we had no direction. At some point, we were exactly that person. So I think that if to say to somebody, like, choose something that you care about or something you're passionate about or really interests you, and then like deep dive into it. And that could lead to, I mean, you don't know where it's going to lead. I had no idea where wrestling was going to lead, but I certainly didn't think the Olympics, like, and I, same thing with MMA. I did it because, man, there's something inside me just really loved to do it, and I didn't even know why. So I think that if I could, give advice to somebody, is like, man, like, keep sifting through different things and find out something that you really, really love, and then see how far you can take it. And you might surprise yourself. That's just what I would suggest. That's only because that's what I did. So,
and I think it's a very interesting thing to kind of buttress, Sarah, what you're saying is, I mean, look, man, like, winner circle or not, like I fail. I fail every week. I fail all the time, right? It's a question of, what do you do with it? What is the mindset, right? So it's not so much the idea of pushing oneself from an identity management perspective to be victorious all the time. I think it's a question of, how do I conquer, right, the little battles every single day, right? And what does conquering mean, right? Then we start talking about self-mastery, right? What is the transitioning period that I take some sort of negative loop that happens, and now let me turn it into an open loop that can be constructive and positive. It has nothing to do, I think, with the big wins. I think when you look at folks historically who have fostered a deeper sense of intestinal fortitude and resilience, the hits are coming. None of us can avoid them, right? Whether it's physical, mental, social, spiritual, it doesn't matter. All of us are going to take those hits. All of us are going to get beat down. I do think it is a question of whether it's at a microscopic level, right, or a macro, what do you do with it? Right. And if you're at a position where you can look at yourself and have the belief, right, to know that all I need to do is just 1 inch today, 1 inch in front, right? Knowing that I may take a step back every now and again, it's going to happen, right? But if the mindset is, no matter what, just give me 1 inch forward, right? Then that's when, like, for define incredibly subjective, right? But being victorious, for me, that's it right there.
I like that. Shaun? What do you got?
Yeah, it's a good flippity flop, Jake. I really like it. It's easy to default into how to smash or crush or dominate or win, or it's easy to default into that. It's generally how my mind thinks. But there's a time in my life when it didn't think that way. I had to be taught it. Before I joined the military, back in '83, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do any of these things. I was still in the singular phase, trying to understand the lesson in life. I didn't even know there was lessons. So I didn't know much at all. And but here's the best part, I feel anyway, to your question. For the folks out there who, we'll call it, haven't been in a winner's circle, whatever that means nowadays. And I don't know if we're winners. I just know we're people who've tried hard and had some outcomes. Whether they've been successful or not is neither here nor there. But what does distinguish this panel is people who are in the game of pursuing the game. And it creates, we'll call them victories. So if you've never been in that circle before, like I wasn't at one point in my life, well, freaking congratulations. Because you're on the precipice of the best opportunity of your life, where you get to think, I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to freaking pursue victory, just like those guests did on this panel, and I'm going to smash. Because the moment that you decide that and engage in that process, that first year is freaking awesome. Because you go from kind of sucking to sucking less. And the delta between the kind of sucking and sucking less is pretty big. Because you're in the game, you're making an effort. And after a year of pursuing victory, whatever that means to you, you'll be able to look back a year from now and your eyes will like kind of cartoon out as you reflect on what you've accomplished. I believe that if you've never been in a winner's circle before, if you don't know how to do any of this stuff, just like I was before I joined the military, congratulations. Find yourself a good crew and start learning how to smash.
Yeah. Now, this is Jake. I really appreciate you jumping in on that question because I was going to take us there anyway.
Sorry, I took your job for a second chance.
No, it's all good, man. You can take my job.
You've still got a job. You've still got a job.
Yeah. So I have a quick story, and I just want to get your guys' thoughts on it. So my wife and I were driving down the freeway just a couple of days ago, and as we were driving down the freeway, we saw a car pulled over in front of a police cruiser. And as we were passing, we saw that one of the occupants was on their butt on the side of the road with their hands behind their back. I couldn't see where their hands were, but I had a pretty good idea. And the other person was pressed up against the trunk of that car with their hands behind their back. And I was thinking to myself, like, oh, those guys are going to jail. Like that's a pretty good. And my wife was, well, maybe they're just tired. Maybe they're just sitting down. Like, okay, that's a great thought. But I stopped while we were driving, and I was thinking to myself that, that is the perfect opportunity for that person or those two people to really reflect on where they are in life. That is an outstanding opportunity to just really go, man, how did I even get here? The sad part is that most people won't take that opportunity. They will, when they walk up to the precipice of I now have this opportunity to really reflect on my life and make some really hard choices and choose to do things better, I think a lot of people back off from that precipice rather than engage it or just jump off the cliff or whatever analogy you want to use. So I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on the difficulties in integrating that life choice, whether it is being pulled over on the side of the road and being in handcuffs, or it's, losing a major competition, or if it's loss of a love. There's so many points in time where you can utilize that reflection position, but don't.
So in just some of the people that I've known and have talked to in different low points in their life, I think with some people, they can become more paralyzed with indecision. Maybe at that point in their life, they're everything is such a dumpster fire that, if you walk into some place and we just moved and have to reorganize everything. And it's man, you can get overwhelmed with so much stuff to do that you just don't know where to start. And so you sometimes just don't, you fall back into the habit of what feels comfortable or what you had been doing, even if it's wrong, because you don't know or have the tools or it could even just take one step in the right direction and start cleaning up one part. I think for some people, it's getting off the starting blocks seems to be a really difficult thing.
Yeah. Jake, you got any thoughts?
Oh yeah, I got thoughts on this one. So for those that don't know my story a little bit, I was assaulted in 2011. I was 23 years old. I was left blind in one eye, ruptured right eardrum. I developed occipital neuralgia, which is a chronic pain disorder of my neck. And I've lived the last 12 years or whatever living with this pain. But as Sarah, you mentioned, the starting blocks, I was bedridden for 8 months. I couldn't walk across the hall to like go to the bathroom. So I went from being this individual who played basketball, football, volleyball, softball, like nonstop playing sports, to not having the capability to do so. And it was like a whole part of me was ripped away. There's so many lessons in that first year where I could fill this entire conversation for the rest of the hour. But the getting starting blocks, Sarah, for me was getting out of the bed onto the floor to stretch. That's it. That's all I could do at that time. And it was like taxing. I had gone from 240 pounds to 178 at my lowest, and I'm 6'2". Like I was bone. That starting block for me was like a massive shift, because I could have went in a very low and tough direction from that point. And it was my decision in the end of the day to just get on that floor and stretch. And a lot of people can't make that decision, right? So
Yeah. Gino, you got any thoughts?
Yes. Okay. So, profound, Jake, right? The decision-making process. There's so much that goes into that. And I'm referring specifically, right, to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so what we're talking about a lot right now is very much introspective and self-actualization, being able to recognize a lesson, the importance of it, the value of it, and what are you going to do with it. But when you are dealing with situations, Chance, just like you said, right? Two guys sitting on the side of the road, they're about to get pinched and they're going to jail. And what's the thought process? What's going through their mind, right? And what's the story that has led up to that point in their reality to where now they're looking at incarceration? Well, to get to a place to where at that moment where they're sitting on the side of the road handcuffed, and to be able to say, how did I get here? How did I get here? Like, what were the parts? What were the choices and decisions made that led me here? In reality, right? The cognitive load, the cognitive function of what it is that's happening at that moment in time, the stress response is just firing off like crazy. They're trying to make sense of what they're going to do next. And so many people that go through trauma, right, or go through very, very high levels of adversity, it's hard. It's hard to make sense of that fray, right? Because it is so cloudy, right? There's so much chaos for us to make sense of. And Jake, back to your point, you made a decision, right? You had the discipline to stop and make a decision and stick to that decision, right? And so you start surpassing levels with you getting assaulted, right? At that level, man, like the physiological needs, the safety needs, the relationships, the love, the belonging, self-respect, and all these things to get you to a place to say, you know what? Now's the time, right here, right now, no excuses, right? And I'm going to persevere, even if it is just one small movement a day, right? And so I say all that to say, I do believe that it's very hard nowadays for folks to be able to take a step back, because the amount of stimuli that detracts us from self-actualization, to be able to understand the importance of something like discipline, to understand the importance of lighten your cognitive load so you can think clearly, cut out all the noise, right? Disconnect and really focus on what it is that matters to get you to that next level, whatever that next level is for you. But it does start with a choice, and it's one choice at a time, right? And being loyal to that choice. That's another big thing.
That's a whole nother conversation, I think.
Yes.
Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. We have to make choices in life constantly. It's a binary moment every second. We're always choosing. And sometimes we choose well and sometimes we choose less well. But what I do find interesting, considering Jake's story and then Chance's story about the two fellas, I'm assuming fellas, maybe it's a couple of girls, who knows, that are on the side of the highway cuffed. Well, I see two different situations that could be identical. And so here's why. Jake has run his life. I view the world in patterns. I like to patternize my world. I view everything through patterns. I view the person in front of me as a pattern. It's all patterns to me. So for Jake, in his example, he had the luxury, I'll call it, of being an athlete before he was assaulted. And so he'd already patternized what it means to be an athlete. He already understood what he was now missing in that moment. And so he had, I'll say it, the luxury of understanding what he'd lost and what he wanted back. But to get it back, he still had to make that choice that that's what he wanted to get. And so I kind of feel that maybe he had a one-up. I know that sounds weird, but he kind of had a one-up on those two crims or people that were on the side of the highway in cuffs. Maybe they didn't have that luxury because all their life, and I'm assuming I'm being theoretical here. If they got to that point, there's a chance that they grew up in a pattern that normalized or actualized their activities into a normal pattern where they're a criminal, they do criminal things, and eventually they're going to get caught. And then there's the moment, there's the binary moment on choice. The moment that you're in handcuffs, you get to look back at your pattern and think, is this what I do? And is this what I want to continue doing? And so for Jake, he had something to rely on what he wanted in the future. But perhaps those two criminals, I'm assuming they're criminals, they didn't have the luxury of looking forward into the future to see what they had in the past and what they want in the future. And so it's at that point where I feel you've got to throw in a pattern interrupt, where you have to interrupt someone's pattern to wake them up to a different way to live their life. So I'll go back to Jake. If Jake hadn't had the guts to step out of that bed and get to work based on him realizing what he was missing and what he wanted in his future, that's the moment it requires a pattern interrupt. And if I'm Jake's buddy, you know what's happening? I'm going to the hospital with a couple of coffees, putting one down about 15 feet away and sitting down in a chair and saying, grab your coffee. Whatever it takes, to get Jake out of bed. I'm going to be a tough friend. I'm going to be a loving friend. I'm going to be whatever kind of friend is required in that moment to pattern interrupt Jake out of bed if he can't do it himself. Now, fortunately, no one had to do that because Jake did it himself, but not everyone can. So what I'm suggesting is this. If you don't have the drive, and we've all been in that situation where we don't have the drive to get ourselves out of the problem that we've put ourselves in. Nobody's a robot. No one's operating on 100% all the time. Sometimes we fail. We fail those around us. We fail ourselves. And so nobody's got a perfect track record. So the time that I need a pattern interrupt, I expect my friends to pattern interrupt me, shake me up, recalibrate me, send me off on the right direction, and tell me to go kick ass. That's what I need in life, and I think that's what a lot of people need as well.
So I very much agree with the pattern interrupt, and I do think that he probably did have like a leg up, having had good experiences, which I don't know the rest of your life. Maybe he was a good athlete, but I don't know the whole of his experiences growing up. But one thing I want to say is that because you were discussing people have been raised in different environments, and like not a ton of people know, but like I grew up extremely poor. Both my parents were drug addicts and drug dealers, and I grew up around criminals all the time. So I say that like you can be in that family environment, but you're still in the world. So I can look out to the rest of the world and say, hey, there are people who don't do drugs, and there are families who make the right choices and go and have regular jobs, and they have great lives. And so my pattern interrupt happened because I was the first person in my family to say, I looked around my environment. I'm like, I don't want this. But my way out, because I didn't know about wrestling, I didn't know about any of this, but I was like, I need to go to college. If I go to college, I think I can get out of this kind of lifestyle and get away from the environment I was raised in. So I don't want to say, I think it sometimes can hinder people if we give them too much of a pass having a hard background. Yes, they definitely weren't taught things that you do have a leg up if you're taught things automatically to do the right things. But you also like we're intelligent beings, you know, we can look around and see the people who are doing well in life and the people who aren't doing well. And it does not take, you know, somebody being extremely intelligent to see that when you're around crime, it does not work. You know, it's a bad life. So, but I do wholeheartedly agree that it does take a lot to change patterns, but it takes a lot to change patterns no matter where you are, no matter how you were raised. It's hard to like be kind of a little more set in your ways of something and break out of that. I have a huge amount of respect for anybody who does that.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
You know, one thing, Sarah, to kind of build off of what you just said, there's a principle that we have in my particular discipline, that is liberation is found in the harder choice, right? And so
Wow.
whether it is you choosing at that moment in time, or you coming to at least a recognition that there is another choice, right? It's going to require more resources, right? More faculties from a mental perspective, because it's different. That's why it's hard, right? And if you're going to do something that's worth it, it's going to require a pretty fat deposit, right? Of your time, your energy, your emotions, your resources. But if you're looking for a different way that leads to liberation of who you are, whatever your life story is, whatever those circumstances are, that liberation will always be found in making the harder choice. And that's exactly what you're saying right now. And nothing could be more true, right? It doesn't matter what facet, it doesn't matter what situation. If whatever you're doing ain't working, or you know you don't want it, then something has to change. Well, nothing changes if nothing changes. So you have to make that change, which means you have to make a harder choice, because your brain is wired to conserve energy. It is wired for maximum efficiency, which means it likes taking the simple route. And that's where patterns come into play. That is the backbone of patterns. That's why we do them. That's why we live that way, right? Routines, the whole nine. So breaking that, right? You're altering your neurocircuitry. You're putting neuroplasticity, right, on blast and say, let's do this, which means that it's an energy suck, which makes it hard and difficult. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but that is the key.
Well, to those folks out there, and I think we understand. Well, I think the panel understands that the harder your brain works, the more calories you burn. It's a big engine if you're using it well. So here's my advice: carb up, Start using your brain to liberate yourself towards victory. It's a pretty simple choice. Fuel your life towards victory.
Mm-hmm.
And caffeine. I love coffee.
Caffeine.
I do love coffee.
This is it right here. We got
cognitive functions like more fat, just so you know, Shaun. But we might have to get Gino.
That is true. That is a blood barrier crossover. Thank you for MCT oil.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have to say, just like because you're on that conversation, Sarah, like nature nurture, like you're right in that debate, right? Where you're talking about defeating your surroundings, right? You got out of that. You didn't have the nurture, possibly. I don't actually know, but people in situations like tough situations where they come from very little and like overcome everything along the way to like, but it really is about overcoming that situation that you're in, and you found your path, fortunately, and a lot of people do not find the path. So,
and even one that's way less talked about and way less respected is people who have grown up in luxury and have everything laid out for them. Imagine how hard it will be to take the hard path. My life was already hard. Like it was a different type of hard, but it was going to be hard no matter what. But imagine your parents, in their best efforts to love you, open all the doors for you. You know, imagine trying to change out of that and become and have like the life lessons, stuff like that. Like they're handicapped more than I was, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, Gino.
and so
Sorry, Shaun.
what I'd said earlier when I mentioned that congratulations to everyone out there who is kind of in the hurt locker right now and doesn't understand the path forward. Well, it's like the best Christmas gift you'll ever get if you get to work. I mean, if you put in a solid year, you can look back and think, that's the best thing I've ever done in my life for everyone around me, including myself. And not to make any comparisons, but I did have a bit of a rough upbringing. We were broke, and my brother committed suicide at 15. I barely scraped through high school. My dad was disconnected from my life. He didn't teach me much of anything. I had to learn how to figure things out by myself. I showed up as a skinny, underperforming kid at 135 pounds on day one of basic training and didn't know which way was up. But I figured it out. Because we've all got choices to make. And the choices that I was making was move forward, not hang out in the quagmire of what my past was. And so I think we have two roles in life. We do our best and move towards victory, whatever that means to everyone out there. And the second thing we're doing is setting a path for others. Now, my life might not be inspiring, but maybe Sarah's life is inspiring. And so there's people out there who, if they can understand her full patternized story, her life, then they should be connecting with that and thinking, if she can do it, I can do it. I feel that's one of our roles in life as humans, is not just to beat the game in our solo little journeys. It's to help others around us understand that they can play a better game.
So just so you guys know, my ultimate goal in life is happiness with my relationships, happiness in the things that I get to do. Like it's not medals. I strive my best. I gave everything that I can, and I enjoy what I do. But that is not what I feel like is my ultimate trophy or end game. It's having some of the things that I feel like are the best things in life, a great relationship with my husband, a great relationship with my children, and to be able to pursue my life in the way that feels right to me. That is my gold medal, not the competitions. But I mean, obviously I'm competitive. But those, I feel like that is a greater victory. And anybody who has that, like we are on the same level. We're on the same level, because I wouldn't trade the things that are my ultimate goals. I would give up those medals in a second, for my child to be healthy and happy in a second. So, I think I do have some of my accomplishments, but I still feel on the same level as other people when it comes to what I truly want in life. I think all of us want that.
Yeah. I love that you went there too, because this is where I was going to finish up in the line of questioning here, was the differences between external lessons versus internal lessons. And Shaun, you kind of alluded to it in terms of like you, and as well as you did, Sarah, was like you had to learn some of the lessons yourself. You had to just go out there and like make mistakes and try stuff, and you're going to have to learn them. But there's also external lessons where, you get passed on information, or you read it in a book and you're like, wow, that makes total sense. And you just kind of integrate it into your life. And what I want to ask now is more along the lines of, what do you think? Do you think that those lessons are absorbed in a similar manner? Do you think one has a priority in your own head versus not? So like, would learning the lesson yourself through the mistakes, do you think that would make it stick longer, or to make it easier to integrate versus reading it in a book and going, oh no, that makes perfect sense? Get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I think that would probably be, in my experience, that sometimes is person to person, and which I think one of the few talents that I have, as far as cognitively, I am someone that's very good at looking at other people learning a lesson and not having to learn it myself. And I think that gives me a little bit of a jump on things. But everybody else that I've met, like them experiencing it, seem to be the more have more impact on them. So people who know certain things, but they have to like learn that hard lesson, but not completely like destroy their life, but learn that lesson themselves. That seems for most people to be the stronger impact.
Jake, what do you think?
I want to hear what Gino has to say first. That's what I think.
Roger. Sure, Gino, what do you got?
So Sarah I do agree that is person to person. From a fundamental principle, though, right? So typically, emotion trumps logic, right? Unless you've got the discipline to fortify your logic to consume your emotion, right? And so the idea that most people have to learn lessons themselves, they have to taste that burn, they have to feel, right, that failure at a different level, that sting, versus the people that could watch or listen and say, well, if it happened to them, it could probably happen to me. And I can identify with that, and I don't want to go through that, and I want to get to that next point as efficiently as possible. That takes a different level of self-mastery, right? It really does, right? It takes a different level of being able to step, watch, observe, assess, and then apply it to yourself, knowing that logically, I have no emotion attached to what it is that's directly happening to that person right now, but I can identify because I may be in that same position one day. So maybe I should use a little bit of wisdom right now and let me apply that to my life so I can avoid that. That takes this idea of trumping, right? That emotional need to, no, I got this. And that's where ego kind of comes into play. Like, well, that happened to them. It's not going to happen to me. I can tell you a lot of different folks that I've worked with in the special operations community and the professional athletic community that you carry that and you think you're infallible, right? You're going to have a challenge, right? And so those are hard lessons to learn. They're very hard lessons to learn. But to Sarah's point, she does have a leg up. And the fact that she's done that kind of work at a cognitive level, at an identity management level, it does. And anyone who can do that, highly, highly encourage you to do so. But the same token, all of us have our weak points. All of us have our blind spots. There are going to be some things that you do just have to learn yourself.
Well, it's not that any kind of special thing on my part. I grew up around drug addicts, and it was a terrible thing. So it was not a brilliant choice to be like, hey, if I do these things, I'm going to end up exactly here. Like that's where it kind of sprung off. Learning from other people was learning the very easy lesson right in front of my face at 14.
Yeah.
100%. Jake, do you
Yeah.
Yeah,
now I'll go.
Yeah.
That's why I let Gino go first, though, because we pass on that knowledge and I have more to work on. So my big thing, like internal, external, everything's about reality. The true, like realistic, like opportunities we have. A lot of times, we're in situations externally. People are telling us from their experiences, from everything that they've learned, their life lessons. And if any of you have ever read like David Goggins' books, there's an individual, and if you've read his first book, you know he almost learned every lesson the hard way. Did it multiple times, like fought through it, fought against adversity. And it seems like as you read his book, you're like, oh, did he do it all the hard way? Was there someone along the way that said this is maybe the better route? And sometimes we don't have that person that's like, this is just reality. You have water in your lungs. It's called pneumonia. Like, stop. But you don't realize how that's going to end up at the end. Reality around us and our choices within that is like super important, internal or external. We make choices on what is truly reality, or we hit a wall. And I think that people, especially nowadays, struggle with that, with realistic goal settings. And it seems like everybody, I want to be an influencer. I want to be a Kim Kardashian. I'm going to learn from her lessons. Well, is that the best route for you as an individual? Who externally is supporting you or trying to bring you to a realistic point of view on your goals? I think it's a really tough like balance of situational awareness to are you even in a situation where you're capable of getting to that height? At what point in time in the athletic community, especially, do we say like, sorry, you like maybe you're not that as talented as the next person? Is that going to help that person or completely diminish them out of the sport entirely? I know there's people along the route that were like, Jake, you're not going to be like a college basketball player. Like, you're not good enough. And what did I do? I went and did it because I felt like that was within my realistic goals. But there's people trying to pass on lessons that they've learned the hard way or they were taught, and they're not the correct lesson for you as an individual. So realistic situational choices in our lives are going to affect us person to person. It's tough. It's a tough blend.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun, you got some thoughts?
I do. So I learned through the School of Hard Knocks. That's how I came up. That's how I learn best. And if things are going full sideways, that's where I'm learning the most. And so I'm comfortable with that. It doesn't mean it's the easy way. It's just how I learn in the trenches. So that's me then. But me now, I'm a bit different. And so I'm going to propose something real quick that I don't think the way that you learn in life is so carved in stone that if you figured out how you learn, well, that's how you're going to learn for the rest of your life. Because now at 60, I can assure you that I learned differently than when I was 20. And so don't be too confident. Anyone, not the guest panel, of course, but anyone who's listening, don't be too confident that you've got yourself all figured out and that that's how it's going to be for the next several decades. Because that's not the case for me. So now I still learn through the School of Hard Knocks, but I also learn through my friends by observing them, of course. And so the other piece that I would like to add is you can go out there and get all the scars and bumps and bruises and blood, sweat, and tears that you want. But most of that is hardware based or your body based or physical activity based that then drives lessons into your intellect or drives lessons into your emotional state or drives lessons into the internal, we'll call it. That's externally your lessons. But there's internal lessons that you can learn without getting all blood and sweat and tears. And it's called freaking reading. Like, upgrade your software. Update your software. I mean, if you haven't read a book in a decade, what, are you Windows 95 right now, or are you DOS? If you don't know what DOS is, do some reading. And so I think that we can categorize lessons in life through, man, I can't believe that time I broke my leg. Those are lessons. But there's other lessons called a freaking library. So it's just a thought.
100%. Now we're a little bit over time here. I just first off want to say thank you guys. This has been a great conversation. I think we have touched on quite a lot, and I know we are just barely scratching the surface on lessons in life. So I might just turn this into an entire week kind of conversation for later, but I do really appreciate it. Sarah, Jake, Gino, fantastic conversations. Let's hit some final thoughts, and then we'll shut her down for the afternoon. But Gino, I'm going to put you up first.
Yeah,
Final
man.
thoughts on anything?
Kind of going back to the very beginning of the conversation, because my wheels are turning on this right now, and it's something that I'm going to do this weekend. Is summarize. If I had to take a look, so people that I work with, I have them do. They write their own personal constitution, then a few weeks later, I have them write their eulogy, and then reflect on both and share it with those that they love the most. One thing I think is a beautiful compliment, and it goes back to the very beginning, is if you had to summarize one lesson that you want your life to kind of symbolize and be able to be a lighthouse for those that you love, right? For those that will be here when you're no longer here, when they think about your life, what's the one lesson that you want them to learn from your experiences and the wisdom that you've garnered and things that you've been able to kind of withstand, right? With life's trials and tribulations. But what is it? If you had to characterize it, right, in one sentence, what is the lesson that you want others to take from your life?
I like that. I like that a lot. Jake, final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. Okay, what I think is and it's more of like I put it towards the viewers as like a challenge, to learn about not only your own life lessons but the people around you. I implore everyone to message their mother or father or grandparents. Ask them about your mother's first year experiences as a mother. Ask them about their fondest memory of you and experience with you. Ask them like your moment of pride for you as a child, and reach out and see what they have to say about your life, about their experience external to you. You'd be surprised at the things, the people around you, your support system, whether that you're messaging a friend, a best friend, or a cousin. It doesn't matter. Ask them, and they're going to tell you some like periods of times of your life that you're not even going to remember that you learned a lesson or you experienced something that was absolutely amazing to them. And you're going to find out what's important to those individuals around you as you as a person. I think it's a beautiful thing too. You'll be surprised at the messages you receive from people, and it will tell you a lot about yourself as an individual.
Yeah, 100%. Sarah, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that if I had to, if I was gonna leave anybody with a final thought, I just try to think a lot of times about like one of my favorite quotes, and I have like probably like 4,000 favorite quotes, but one that is a little bit more on the top is, "It's never too late to make a fresh start," and that's something that I think everyone can take. I've used it in sports. I've used it in life. Like in every type of situation, it doesn't matter, relationships, whatever, it's never too late to make a fresh start. So wherever you are, whatever your circumstances, if you are alive, you can make positive changes. And that's
100%. Shaun, some final thoughts?
Yes, and because we're running a little tight on time, I'm going to cheat again. I can cheat. And I'm going to go with Sarah. And that is, you can try to create a new life, as it were. You can try to create new lessons in your life. You can pursue betterment within your life. But I think that you can also try today to make a new impression on those around you. Whether they're remote to you or whether they're your family, it doesn't much matter. Just try to make a new impression, a new version of yourself, a new moment where they kind of look at you and think, oh, that's a bit different. That's nice. That's new. I like that. That's appealing. That's an improvement. That is victory. I think that we can try to do the best for ourselves by internally observing that. But I think that a great way to externalize it is to get a read on your life, just as Jake said, by interacting with those around you, pattern resetting, and having the feedback from people around you to the point where they notice something new in you.
There's an old saying from the Army that we got taught very early, and it was the beatings will continue until morale improves. And I used to think of it as a joke more than anything, but it really comes back down to, I heard it a different way, and it was the lessons will be repeated until they are learned. And once you learn your lessons, then you have to build upon them. And once you can build upon them, you can grow into the person that you're meant to be. You can do that with us every day here on The Collective. See y'all tomorrow.
Chimo.